three keys to painting a glowing effect are: 1, get the right values of your colors; 2, get the right saturation of your colors; and 3, indicate the correct reflected light. So let's start by talking about values. Now, values are how light or dark a color is. And if you want something in your painting to look like it's very bright and very light, it needs to be surrounded by the appropriate darks. For example, in this painting of the pumpkin, the shadow is lighter than the background, which is the darkest dark, but it's not that much lighter. It's still very dark. And even the light side of the pumpkin, the side that's getting hit with light, it's still pretty dark. If I'd painted the light side of the pumpkin in too bright, when I went in to paint the inside where the light's coming out of, I wouldn't have anywhere to go to make it lighter. I knew going into this that I really had to nail the value of the areas around the parts that were glowing. Like, that's the difficult part. Painting the parts inside the pumpkin that are lit up, that was pretty easy. It's the other things and getting those right that can be tough. To illustrate this further, let's take a look at this landscape painting that I did and how I wanted to get this house in the back to read as getting hit with bright sunlight and just be this glowing house in the background being lit up by the setting sun. So I knew in order to do that, I had to paint the trees around it dark enough so that the house looked very bright. Even though these trees are also in the sunlight and I'm painting the light side of them, I still need to make sure it's dark enough to make that house seem bright. Now, a helpful tip to make sure you get your values in right is to get in a value that is very easy to get. In this pumpkin painting, it was the background. It was definitely the darkest dark. So I knew if I got that in, I could use it to compare the other values to. So I started with that, and then I moved to the shadowed side of the pumpkin, which was just slightly lighter than the background. And then I moved to the light side of the pumpkin, which was slightly lighter than the shadowed side of the pumpkin. And I just worked my way from there. And every time I add in a new value, that's one more value that I can use to check future values too. See how it's like putting together a puzzle? Most of the time when I have to paint a very strong light effect like this, I'll wait as long as possible before turning the lights on, you know, and making it seem very bright. For example, in this nighttime painting that I did of a dock, I really waited as long as I could before putting in those brightest brights with thick paint. I established all my darks and even my midtones, and then once that was all in, I went in and turned the lights on with very bright values. And sometimes you're gonna have to wait until you have a few different examples of values in your painting before you can dial them in correctly. That's why in this pumpkin painting, I stayed in this one area and kind of figured out the shadowed side and the light side, and then some of the area inside the pumpkin, and kind of took notes on the values so I could compare them and dial them in right in this small little sample size, and then I could translate that to the rest of the painting. All right, now let's talk about color saturation. This is like, you know, how vibrant the colors are. And see, if you put my painting into black and white, it doesn't really seem like it's glowing, which means it's not all values doing the work. The saturation of the colors are very important. Now, I feel like the hard part isn't getting very saturated colors. It's actually getting the desaturated colors. To get saturated colors, you pretty much just use the paint straight out of the tube. You know, when you mix two colors together, you don't need to add any of its complement to it to neutralize it or knock it back. Now, if you don't know what I mean when I say complement colors, or you struggle with mixing colors, I actually have the color mixing video from my Foundations of Oil Painting course for free. In it, I show you how I mix up any color using the primaries and white. If you want to check that out, there's a link to it in the description of this video. So you can see the outside of the pumpkin, both in shadow and in light, are orange, but they're a pretty desaturated orange, meaning it's orange with orange's complement blue mixed into it. Whereas the colors inside the pumpkin, the light areas, are very saturated with color. That contrast is what's going to give it that pop and that glow effect. Another example is in this still life I did of some fruit. Again, if I put it in the black and white, it doesn't seem very glowy or anything special. But in color, it really pops. And that's because it has the correct balance of desaturated color and saturated color. Now, just in general, in my experience, I feel like it's better to have more desaturated color in your paintings. That way, when you do choose to put saturated color in, it holds that much more weight. All right, now I'm gonna do a color mixing demonstration to show you what I'm talking about. All All right, so now I'm gonna mix up a few of these colors and show you how I desaturate or saturate colors when mixing them. So got my colors, it's got the primaries in white, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, cadmium lemon, and titanium white. I just have some of the Gamblin solvent-free gel as my medium. So let's start with like the shadowed side of the pumpkin. So it's an orange. So the first thing I think of is I go, all right, let's make an orange. Let's get some yellow and some red and get an orange. Now this is a very vibrant orange already. And this actually is close to orange in there, maybe a little more yellow. Yeah, it kind of blends right there. So we can actually knock out this color right away. So since we have that, might as well just mark that down. But let's make this the shadow color. I'm gonna add a little more red to it. So that's like a darker orange than what we had there, but we need to desaturate it. So orange's complement is blue, a little blue in there. You see how it's gonna desaturate it. And now I'm saying, okay, what do I need to do to it? Oh, I need to add more red for sure. So add more red. I know that's still too vibrant, so I'm gonna add some more blue. Now I feel like I'm getting closer. It's probably still too light. Yeah, definitely still too light. Some more red, more blue. Ooh, pretty much there now. So I got the shadow color. Put that right there. All right, now let's move to the light side of the pumpkin. So I got this dark side, so I look at something like right here and I think, okay, what is that compared to this? It's like it's more yellow and it's lighter, so let's just start by branching off. I like to use the same pile of paint, kind of branch off from it. I feel like it helps keep me in line and gives color harmony to my painting. So I'm just branching off here, so I'm not losing that dark, which I might need later. Adding some more yellow and red. I think I'm pretty close. Oh, got a little more red and yellow. Because I'm like thinking about the saturation too. I'm like, oh, like the color I put down was a little too brown. So I'm like, all right, I need to up the amount of just straight red and yellow. All right, now I'm doing something very specific right here. I am taking the paint out of my brush because I'm realizing that the color I'm mixing right now is too desaturated and I need it to be more saturated with color, which means I need more clean orange in there. And I'm not gonna be able to get clean orange if I got a brush full of dirty orange. So yes, I still use my paint thinner, but I feel like most of it is pinching it out with a paper towel. I see a lot of students not clean their brush with their paper towel good enough when they specifically need a clean, vibrant color, and it just throws everything off. So clean brush, a little more straight yellow, a little more straight red. I'm knocking the vibrancy of that up. Oh, so there, pretty much there. So that is the light side of the pumpkin. Even though that's the light side, it's still a pretty desaturated orange. You know, especially compared to like how saturated this one was. So again, really cleaning my brush with the paper towel and the paint thinner. I go through a lot of paper towels. Now we already did like a very vibrant orange, so you know when it comes time to the yellow in the center, it's a yellow and just a touch of the red, and you can see how vibrant that is. Probably put a little more yellow into it. So that's very vibrant right there. And there are these areas right on the edges of the carving. They're like this very vibrant reddish orange. Like if I just added some red to this and got it as vibrant as I can, pretty much like an orange straight out of the tube. If I had an orange straight out of the tube, that's gonna be what's happening here on this edge. And you can see next to my other two oranges up here, how vibrant that gets. So always be paying attention to the saturation of your color. Make sure you got a clean brush when you need clean, vibrant color. And you know, the opposite of that, if you're mixing a color that needs to be grayed down or desaturated, browned down a lot, don't be afraid to not clean your brush that much and really mix all that paint together and get good natural desaturated color. All right, and last is the reflected light. You can see here I'm brushing in orange paint into the wet paint of the table. I really want to have soft edges here to indicate that it's light coming from the pumpkin onto the table. Also including this light on the rim of the smaller pumpkin is just going to really be the icing on the cake of selling the effect of light coming from the pumpkin behind it. It's a small little detail, but it really makes a big difference in the end painting and really selling this light effect. All right, hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to see what I am painting on a daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram at Forza43. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.